It's no secret that horror movies are often made on small budgets in order to maximize profits with minimum risk. Some of the greatest financial successes of our time are horror movies. The Blair Witch Project, with a budget of $60,000, grossed nearly $250 million worldwide. And Paranormal Activity, with a meager budget of only $11,000, was able to pull in over $190 million at the box office. Of course, not all films are based on new IP. This era in horror films also brought in the controversial trend in remakes. According to Joe Tompkin, reboots act as a means of reflexively interrogating media properties so as to mediate and contain knowledge about those properties in accordance with the political economy and brand valuing strategies of contemporary Hollywood. Companies want to see how far they can stretch their brands before opening up to new ideas. While this wasn't the first time that remakes had been introduced to the market, the 2000s saw a particularly strong spike in remake production. But the question is, was this really a bad thing? Let's discuss. Even from a creative standpoint, remakes aren't the industry-ruining entities that you may think they are. Now here's the part where I might put a positive quote about remakes from a famous filmmaker, but I'm not going to do that because I think the quote that most fits what I'm trying to say is this: I didn't much care for the Dawn of the Dead remake. It was a well-made action movie, but it really wasn't anything like my Dawn of the Dead. George A. Romero. What George Romero is saying here is that Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake was both well-made and completely different from the original. In this scenario, the original Dawn of the Dead serves as an identifiable brand, or in other words, a shell to encase your movie in order to get greenlit. Kevin Heffernan once wrote that films from Hollywood's past and from East Asia provided templates in which filmmakers could explore both psychological and visceral modes of horror. These horror remakes display tremendous suppleness and ingenuity in their deployment of motifs drawn from both the original movies and contemporaneous horror films. Horror remakes created a doorway and framework for filmmakers to walk through and build off of. In the 2000s and even now, a studio isn't going to fund an original idea that could lose them millions of dollars, when they could put money into an already known brand that is likely to return profits. But what filmmakers do in these scenarios is put their original ideas into said established brands. When someone like George Romero says that he doesn't like the remake of his movie, it's a good thing, because he's right. It isn't the same movie, it's something else entirely. The things that used to scare us are replaced with the new. This is abundantly obvious when examining the time period in which these movies were predominantly released, the turn of the century. The emergence of a new millennium brought a number of new ideas and events, and while new things are scary, no one quite exploits those fears quite like a filmmaker. In an era of a new recession, Y2K, 9/11, and a plethora of new technologies, fear was on the rise. And according to Valerie Wee, the implication that America and Americans are in potential danger from external forces would find clear expression in several of Hollywood horror remakes. Furthermore, as stated by Kevin J. Wetmore Jr., more so than any other genre, horror concerns the fears and anxieties of the society that produced it. The Victorians produced Dracula with their anxiety over sex and bodies. Japan gave the world Gojira in 1954 as an extension of concern over atomic weapons and atomic bomb testing in the Pacific. With an advancement in medicine and surgery, we received the Eye. For the ever-expanding world of cell phones, we got When a Stranger Calls. And of course, we got The Ring, a remake of Japan's Ringu. Amy Ozawa states that the success of the Hollywood remake of Ringu comes from the way in which it succeeded in making it totally adapted to American cultural background. It is as if it excised the notions of physicality in the original and replaced them with the implantation of cybernetic devices. Adaptation through remakes lets audiences experience both new and old ideas quite literally through a different lens. Many would argue that remakes represent everything that is wrong with Hollywood and perpetuate an ongoing recycling of the same ideas. I would argue that studios are not going to change their ways. There's a reason that they got to where they are now, and it wasn't through spending money that they didn't think would make them a profit. In opposition, I would say that remakes represent a bastion of hope for filmmakers. It's the classic Trojan horse scenario. The outside may look normal and like what you've already seen before, but on the inside is something new and unexpected. These remakes weren't the beginning of a creatively society of drones that watch the same movie over and over again. They were the easiest way to give a new movie to the public. Otherwise, it never would have been made at all. That's the real secret, the real value of remakes.